my past is within the voluntary sector, and actually I met Liz a couple of years ago in my last role, and that there is a lot to be learned, I think, from evaluating monitoring within the voluntary sector. I mean, from what I've heard, there's two clear evaluations that we all need. It's the journey of the person, the resident, which is one form, but then also the community impact. Going on the individual kind of evaluations, so measuring the journey, there's a lot out there, like I think someone mentioned earlier about before and after kind of questionnaires and things, and we've used outcome stars, which was originally kind of formulated in homeless shelters, and that's something that I think would be really relevant to our residents. So that's measuring all the softer outcomes, way confidence, communication, team building, etc. And then the community impact side is something that obviously we're all facing, and it is all the positive research. I think one of the things I wanted to throw in, I've had a recent meeting with the Young Foundation, I don't know that they've formulated something called the warm kind of assessment, and that might be worth looking at. We did put it to our stakeholders, but it wasn't right at the time, but it's something to possibly look into.
I wonder if we could come back to what you said, Caroline, that you put things on hold for the time being, because you were looking to see whether some kind of consensus could emerge, some kind of agreement about what it is we're trying to measure, whether some common methods or approaches could be reached. Because clearly there's a great range of things going on at the moment, and people keep throwing in, well, we're using this tool, or we're using that tool, or we're measuring this and we're measuring that. And obviously that kind of diversity in one sense is encouraging. It's exciting to see all these different people doing all these different things. But also the danger is, particularly when you try to come back to the NHF and say, well, what's the sector achieving as a whole, it's quite difficult because, it's lots of different and diverse things, but there's no way necessarily of putting it together very easily. So what's your thinking on in terms of what would persuade you to rejoin the...
Oh, no,
I know you're
desperate to rejoin it. I think what will make us jump is if we think there's down one route or another, is if we think there is a potential solution which has got a range of buy-in. I don't think we'll end up with one solution because you're trying to address too many different issues. But I think there will be a lot of commonality in what we want to measure, which is the basic cost-benefit of our time just to the outputs. The wider issues around tenant gain, which I think is the strongest one. And then a wider framework that gives it some sort of political impact, which I think is not of particularly great interest to us, but is probably a wider gain for the community. So what will make us jump is if we actually come up with a framework which, I don't know, either 80% of it is common to everybody, or 80% of people think it's of interest to them, and they will make the compromise that they need to make to come up with a common solution. And I think that is got to be driven. I don't think it's not going to evolve because it's too interesting, is it? You can go to so many little blind alleys on this one that you really enjoy, but actually take a lot of effort. So I think it's got to be driven, and I don't know who that driver is. And I think that's really what I wanted to get out of the conversation today was, when you look at what CIH are doing or CLG are doing, and what you're doing here in terms of the discussion, which is really interesting, what the research is throwing up. I think the research is actually what I was waiting on as much as anything else because of that discussion that we've been having in the background. There's got to be something which comes out with enough commonality that people will go, yeah, it's worth making compromises to go with.
Can I first ask whether people agree with Caroline? I know some people are forging ahead, that they haven't necessarily paused, but do people recognise the validity of what Caroline is saying?
Yeah,
about the need for
I think there's a core set of measurements that we could all subscribe to, and then we'll all each have our own ones for ourselves.
And the funders.
That's raising another set of issues, really, isn't it? Do people agree with that? Or do people want to add to this idea of a sort of core set of...
Could I just suggest that maybe the NHF as our representative body ought to be the lead on this, and that they ought to be looking to take the views of the membership to other organisations in a kind of really grown-up way, so that I don't get a random request, or what seems when you sat there doing your day job to be a random request from the CIH for some information, and then another one from another organisation, another one from the NHF, and you're just bombarded with requests for different types of information. So you're constantly adjusting what your data sets are, and actually we need to be saying as a body, this is a core set of things that we will deliver. You can like it or lump it, because you're unlikely to get much else from us. Or you might get something, but it won't cover the whole spectrum of housing organisations, because otherwise we'll just end up with the NHF and CIH and a whole range of other bodies kind of defending their little bit of territory or their business models almost. I think we have to be pushing it from a sectoral point of view, really.
Just throwing it's quite interesting about this core set of measures, and obviously the government is not generally in favour of central measures anymore, less than the last one. From what I know about some of the other measures, benchmarks that I've seen across, say, housing management, is there a danger that by having common set of measures, we can compare organisations' output on this kind of work, and it could be used in order, for the senior level to say, well, they can do it with 3 staff, you've got 6. Why not?
Oh,
And
it's a very cynical response.
You'll
get a sort of community investment league table.
Yeah, there is. I've seen all the quartiles for housing management, how many housing offices it takes to manage stock across the country, and that's, it's maybe something we should be scared of, but it's a possibility that might happen.
I was going to add on that point. If we look back to, say, CORE, which is something that the Federation set up a few years ago, the recording of new entrants into the social housing sector, that then became a regulatory requirement. So I do think we need to balance the fact, and we recognise that at the Federation, the need for prescription adherence to a common model, but also at the back of our mind should always be the threat of regulation. If it looks good and does it across the board, the next thing is the TSA or the HCA want you to do it every way in their way, and also that is one thing I think we need to be mindful of, but also mindful of, and I do agree totally, we need some form of commonality, because it always, different questions, different ways, but also I think what we're measuring is so unique sometimes to individual projects.
Absolutely.
So it is a balancing. I wish I knew the answer, because it is, I totally with you on this, it's a tough one, but then there's that risk of regulation and this thing about league tables and all that. So there are things to be mindful on both sides.
There's also, you're looking at what we're measuring and the common thing for everybody, that there's so many different methods for measuring, and you can have that common what, but we can still all be doing it using a completely different method, whether it's LM3, social accounting, SROI. So we're all going to come out with something that looks different at the end of it anyway.
Well, I'd even go back to SROI, like I said, if we could agree common measures for that one. Because you can only use the same method, but using different measures.
Well, I think there's partly a move toward that, particularly in terms of some of the financial proxies, in terms of some of the RSLs that we've spoken to, around trying to get some consistency around the financial proxies that they use. I suppose the reservation I've got around getting some commonality, whilst I agree it would be really useful for us as a sector to be able to demonstrate the outcomes that we achieve as well as just the outcomes. We're all different organisations, so whilst we work within a housing sector, we're different organisations. We might each have different aims, so the changes or benefits that we want to see happen, which is what we're interested in, may not necessarily apply to everyone. So whilst I think commonality around perhaps some key outcomes might be that if we share them would be interesting, but I was worrying that commonality across the board might
Yeah, I don't
affect
think
our
you do it
individual
across the board.
issues.
I don't think you know do it across the board, but you can have a call.
So, is there any sense in trying to build consensus? I don't know. And perhaps there are, you can have consensus at one level and difference at other levels. I don't know. I mean, coming back to, what Elizabeth put before us was a framework. It wasn't prescriptive, I don't think. And okay, it was a framework which was predicated on sort of the thinking, sort of the underlying thinking of the New Economics Foundation. But I don't know. Maybe there is, and of course, as you say, different associations will take a different perspective on this. In some cases, some of them will say, well, we don't want anything to do with this. It's not, we don't think this is what we should be doing anyway. But is there a basis for those organisations that see this as an important area of their work, continuing to work together, not to develop some kind of prescriptive set of performance indicators, but at least some common thinking around, what the priorities are, and as I say, something akin to the framework, I think, which Elizabeth was putting forward. And then within that, to look at the efficacy of some of these different models and to see whether they can be refined and developed in a way. Is there setting aside the framework thing, in terms of the models that are around, is there a danger that there are too many models and that everybody's coming up with a new model? And surely there must be, I know to some extent you use different models for different purposes, and I take that point, there is no universal model, but nonetheless there surely is room for improvement in terms of understanding about what different models are, how they can work, and also generating at least some comparative information without perhaps getting into league tables. But I don't know. What do people feel about these different models that are being put forward? I think about a dozen different models have been mentioned today.
We chose social auditing and social return on investment because we felt that they were the two most recognised models, and we use them for different purposes. And I suppose from our point of view was, if we are trying to demonstrate the impact that we have, we're more likely to be able to do that by applying a recognised model than making one ourselves, because we'd be then subject to, well, you've established your model, you know how it works, how do we know nothing?
And also with social accounting and SRI, you've got the, they're going to be audited, and so it's like having a set of financial accounts, isn't it? Yeah. So they stand up to more scrutiny.
Do people agree with that? Do they see those as two of the key models which could be used or should be used? Sorry, Vanessa.
Just in terms of the research that's going to be undertaken over the next couple of weeks, that's going to be asking hopefully up to 40 organisations what models they use. Also within that, it's going to collect information on what they see as the main weaknesses of the models and how they actually align with sort of corporate information systems. So I think they're going to get quite a lot of information from that. So that's only one thing to kind of consider before we go around guessing how many sort of models are out there. Okay, it's not going to be comprehensive because it's relatively small scale sort of piece of research, but I think it will give us a starting point that we don't perhaps have at the moment. I think the other thing to say is that at the last similar meeting to this, there was a member of the G15 group there who'd actually they'd come together and tried to look at common outcome measures. And I think they were looking at about sort of 50 different indicators there. They gave up. But I don't know. I don't know what sort of relationships are like between the group and other people. But if it's something that you're going to follow, then surely it makes sense to kind of get hold of something that's already had some thought around it.